Nutrition is highly personalized, and it's really, really important that you do both a genetic test and a blood test, because both of those can then give you information about you. And you mentioned earlier, it's customizing. We want to customize the nutrition plan for each individual.
There's a reason why this podcast is titled Too Young to Be Old, because in your head and your spirit, your heart, you can always be too young to be old, but your body needs to cooperate. And that is where our guest, Mark Kovacs, comes in today. He's all about human performance. He is a longevity expert, and he is fascinating. So join us. Learn how to always remain too young to be old. Hey, everybody, it's Diane Gilman, formerly known as the Queen of Jeans on QVC and HSN, but now the proud host of my podcast, Too Young to Be Old. But it's not all in your head that you can constantly stay too young to be old, and that is why we have Mark Kovacs, human performance longevity expert, with us today to tell us how to fight ageism and how to age healthier, happier, and more gracefully. Mark, we need help. I've got the SOS flag out. I'm about to turn 80 in a couple of weeks, and I feel almost as if there's no place in society for me. I don't have an exercise regime. I used to exercise all the time. I feel like I should be eating especially for my age group, but I have no diet that I can look at, comprehend, and follow. So talk to us. How did you get into this?
First off, Diana, I'm super excited to be here with you. I love your
Thank you.
story. I love your passion, and you're exactly the type of people I've been working with for the last handful of years. So my background's kind of unique. I started in the sports world actually. So I was an athlete. Then went on and did my PhD in physiology, was a lab researcher in sweat and blood labs, and then worked across sports. So I worked in the NBA for the Cleveland Cavaliers, worked with US Tennis Association, heading up sports science, and directed the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, and was an executive with PepsiCo. So that was sort of my sports world. And then over the last few years, I've shifted a lot of my time into the longevity space because I've been working with a lot of executives and individuals that are moving up in age, but trying to maintain as youthful and vibrant life as possible. And so I most recently just finished up working with a company called Canyon Ranch. I was a VP
Yeah.
of Health and Performance there, developed a longevity program and a lot of other initiatives, and a large percentage of the demographics were individuals that were retired by society's age perspective, but weren't retired by any means. They were working, they were active, they were traveling, they were trying to get the most out of that. Some people call it the third age of life. So what are you focused on during that third age? And that's the exciting part of all of this, because we have so much more research, so much more data about what helps people live longer. But my environment and what I do is I use this term durability. We've heard about longevity, we've heard about Healthspan, but I'm very much focused on how do I make individuals as durable as possible so that they can enjoy every day to their maximum right now, but also do that for multiple decades into the future.
My book, which is how I named my podcast, Too Young to Be Old, was about always being so young in spirit that no matter what your numerical age is, you've got that attitude of, I've still got a road in front of me. I've got a lot to learn. I want to execute what I learn. I want to have purpose. And I find that very often I feel like I'm talking into a wind tunnel. We as a society, and I say in my book that the age I'm coming up to, 80 and beyond, is your third act. Your life is like a Broadway play. My life was always so dramatic. So now it's everything. It's the big song. It's all the mysteries coming together to give the play a reason to exist. And I think durability is a fascinating way to put it, Mark, because there are definitely parts of me now that I think this part of my body or that part of my body or my hip socket, or they weren't meant to be here for 80 years, but they're here. What do I do with them now? How do I take care of them? And I've been trying to follow a gluten-free diet. I wonder what you think of that.
There's a lot of options as individuals age on how to reverse aging, literally. One of the areas, there's a concept known as longevity escape velocity, and it's a theoretical concept, but basically, if we can do enough things per year to help reverse aging, you may be able to live forever. That's the theoretical concept. Doesn't mean it's going to happen in the next 5 years or 10 years, but there are definitely things we can do to reverse all aspects of aging. Like you mentioned, joint health. Our joints aren't necessarily designed to do the loads that we've done for as long as we've done. But now we have all sorts of replacement options now. So we have the ability to work through some of that, which has made a huge difference in individuals' lives.
Yeah.
So that's one example. You mentioned nutrition, and you've had success with a gluten-free diet. And gluten's one of those aspects that if people are sensitive to gluten, it's definitely important to remove it from the diet. You will feel a lot better. Getting a food sensitivity test can be helpful. Getting advanced blood work, much more than what you would do on a yearly physical, can be very, very valuable to see other deficiencies, minor, and things that you can then supplement, whether through nutrition or through supplementation. There's so many beautiful things that we know now from the research that allows us to make highly personalized decisions for the individual to help them on their goals.
I think that this period of my life is the age of customization. I've got to customize my life to where I'm at, decide which areas of my physicality need more support, and go after it. And so I also came up with intermittent fasting, which seems to work really well for me. I just don't need that much food. And I got very used to just eating one major meal a day at a certain point in the day. I feel like I'm sort of on my own, but at least I'm doing something. I would say two segments of the audience. One is about age and the fact that we grew up without processed foods and they slowly creep into your life and they're so convenient, and at an older age you may not want to cook. Also, the fact that we are not used to cataloging everything we eat in this country. We just assume it's okay. And there are definitely so many people I know in my age group who never marry food quality to physical feel and performance.
It's such an important point, and in my work, I've done thousands of food recalls, basically food diaries. Goal there is to educate more than anything. So what that means is you write down everything you eat for a few days, then you estimate what you think you eat. And people do that, and their estimation beforehand, when you speak to them and they just communicate, they think they eat pretty healthy. And then you actually look at what they eat and you say, how many calories do you think you eat in a day? And they'll say 2,000. And then you actually do the food recall and you realize they're actually eating 4,000 calories and they don't even realize it. All the snacking, all the sauces that are on a lot of things, when they go out, they think they're getting, a healthy salad, let's say, at a restaurant, and they think it's 400 calories. It's actually 1,200 calories. And those are the things that, from an education standpoint, is so impactful. I've worked with individuals that have completely changed their metabolic profile, changed their weight based on a month of just adjusting that, not even changing their diet, just making smarter choices. So when they go for the salad, they get it without the chips on it, without the heavy sauces, without maybe excess cheese. There's certain things that you remove, and every day you're saving 1,000 calories. And over the course of a week, that's actually nearly 2 pounds per week.
Wow.
So that makes a big, big difference for weight, especially, but also for metabolic profile, which is even more important sometimes.
What is metabolic profile?
So that's really what is the profile of how your body functions internally. And we're talking about blood work predominantly. So people that have high cholesterol, people that have high blood pressure, people that have potentially heart-related issues due to buildup of plaque. So you're trying to improve your blood work, really. So you're trying to, when you go to the doctor and they say this is too high, this level's too high. We've got to get this level down. Diabetes is a great example, your A1C levels. That has a combination of genetic factors that is hard to fight, honestly, because it is, genetic makeup. But then a huge piece of it is lifestyle, and lifestyle is diet, is exercise, is sleep, and it's environment as well. And when I say environment, is what is the environment that you're living in? Your house, how much nature do you get? What is the air quality that you live in? All this plays a role in your metabolic profile. So it's really, really important to sort of evaluate that. And for many folks, they don't know much about that. So work with someone who can give you a good overview of what things you need to adjust in your house. With a lot of the high level folks I work with, we'll do a house audit where we'll go in and we'll look at, are there too many plastics that they cook with, which can leach into the food. What's the environment? So we have a little device that can look at CO2 levels and making sure that there's no mold and things
Wow.
like that. So you're
Wow.
trying to create an environment that helps people optimize their life.
I have three friends. They're all males. They were all in their own way, a little bit overweight to pretty overweight. They all each at a separate time got put on Ozempic. I was going to the same GP as one of them, and this was a doctor who just loved giving you the latest drug. He really didn't want you to take care of yourself. If you had high blood pressure or high cholesterol, don't try and solve that yourself by diet change. I'll just give you a statin, which I refused. Every one of these individuals lost weight on Ozempic and gained back more weight after. One of them can't even lose weight on Ozempic, loses like half a pound a month. I said, well, look at how you eat. I mean, you eat 3 meals a day, and then you wake up at 1 a.m. and go into your kitchen. It's another meal. Eat that in the middle of the night. Take an anti-acid pill so you don't have acid reflux and go back to sleep again. So you're eating 4 major meals a day. In every case, the doctor never talked to the patient about changing their lifestyle. The only change was you got Ozempic. And it seems to me that that is a credo of Western medicine in America. It is, number one, an assumption that your body is going to stop functioning at a certain age, probably around 60, you're going to start having issues, 55 or 60. And it's all going to be managed and vaguely solvable by drugs. And I wonder what your attitude is about that.
Yeah, it's a really important discussion, big picture for the country and philosophically. So we know Western medicine is the best in the world for dealing with sickness. It really is. It's very good for when someone has a major health issue to try to help them either recover from that potentially or at least expand life as long as possible. So that's definitely true. The problem currently is we do a very poor job at prevention and
Yeah.
avoiding sickness. So that's where someone like myself, that's where I spend my time is how do we maximize today so that we don't have to deal with some of the sickness issues. And some things are unavoidable due to family history, but a lot of things are very preventable. And we have so much more knowledge now. The big tenets, these big tent poles that if we can make sure that we focus on, we know correlate with longevity. One is how strong you are. People don't understand that strength is arguably the number one metric for longevity because
Wow.
not so much how strong you are is important. It's what it does for everything else. It allows you to exercise more. It allows you to lift heavier things. When you fall, you're strong enough to catch yourself so you don't break a hip. So all these factors that strength allows you to have stops really bad things happening to you in the future. So strength needs to be prioritized. And as people age, many of them avoid strength because they're like, well, that's for young people. I'm like, no, it's actually more important the older you get. So strength is really important. The new one, which is right there with strength, is actually power. People don't understand that maintaining power output, even into your 80s, is so vital because
What's that?
power is a combination of strength and speed. So being strong is how much can you lift. So lifting is obviously a core foundation of health. But how quickly you can lift something becomes really, really important. Think about when you're walking and you fall off a step. how quickly you can catch yourself and recover
Ah,
is the difference between you falling, breaking a hip, and shortening your life by arguably a decade there, to actually catching yourself and going on your way like nothing happened. That happens dozens of times a year to
yeah.
everyone. And one bad fall, one bad mishap can really shorten life. So that's why power is so important. Making sure that you get on a good exercise program from that standpoint. The third piece of exercise is your aerobic capacity, heart and lung function. And everyone understands the more active you are, the better it is for a lot of different things. But the challenge for most people is they don't like doing higher intensity activity because the heart rate builds up. And for many people, they don't like the feeling of that. It's
Oh, I loved it.
that's high intensity interval training typically
Yeah.
is what, some people either really like that or some people don't. And now we've got this zone 2 concept, which used to be called the fat burning zone. If you remember going to the gyms in the 80s and the 90s, it was the big thing. It was the fat burning zone.
I
And
had my leg warmers
yeah,
on and
exactly.
my headband. I was all there.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is it's easy and everyone can do it. It's really walking or moving, could be on a bike, at a speed where you're breathing heavier, but you can still have a full conversation. You can be on the phone, you can be talking to a friend. So that's why people like that, because it's manageable. Nearly everyone who's active can do it. And you can do it for 45 minutes, an hour, every day. Get that environment built up. So that type of three components to exercise is huge and so important. So that's the exercise bucket. The nutrition bucket's a little bit more complicated because there's so many diets out there. There's so many so-called experts that are giving this diet's the only one you should do. You should be carnivore. You should be vegan. You should be paleo. You should only eat one meal a day. You should eat 6 meals a day. There's all sorts of recommendations on the nutrition
Yeah.
space. And the reason it is because nutrition is highly personalized, and it's really, really important that you do both a genetic test and a blood test, because both of those can then give you information about you. And you mentioned earlier, it's customizing. We want to customize the nutrition plan for each individual. Depending on where you grew up, it dictates how you process food. If your lineage was, say, Eastern European and it was heavier on potatoes and meat and things like that, that type of diet for most people that grew up through that historical lineage, parents, grandparents, great grandparents, you're likely to process that food better. If you grew up in Asia, rice and fish was very popular in what most people would eat, and you process that food better. That's why if you look at certain
Wow.
Asian countries that immigrate to the US and certain regions, they eat a lot of calories, and they eat a lot of calories from rice and from some carbohydrates as well, but they don't seem to put on a lot of weight. Reason being is their processing ability is fine for that. Whereas if you flip it and get someone who grew up in Europe and gave them that type of diet, you see them put on extra weight because they don't have that processing capability. It's not that the food's better or worse, it's that how do you as an individual process it. So that's why it's a deeper dive when you get into nutrition. The third big
Yeah.
one is sleep. We all talk about how important sleep is, but we do sleep assessments on all the individuals we work with, and it's really fascinating to see how long it takes people to get to sleep. They don't realize that's a major negative. And then how many times a night they wake up is a huge thing. It can be over 100 times a night individuals
Yeah.
wake up. If you can fix that piece, your entire outlook on life changes because you have much more energy, you have much more ability to do activities of daily living, and your exercise becomes easier because you have more energy. So that has a whole cascade of positive effects. So sleep is a huge one. And then the last
Huge.
big one is purpose. And purpose and mindset, and making sure that doesn't matter where you are in your journey, you have to have purpose. It could be a hobby, it could be your job, it could be your career, it could be your legacy, it could be your family. It doesn't matter, and it could be all of them combined. But having strong purpose is one of the strongest correlations with living longer and living happier.
I did a series of podcasts on retirement, and they say that the first year of your life in retirement is the most dangerous year of your life because if you let yourself float, and was amazing to me. That happened to me 2 times. First, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 72 years old. And it was the first time in my adult life I was not going to an office every day. And then again, at 78 and a half, I stepped back. I felt I'd aged out of my industry, which was an industry that was aging out. I realized within 4 weeks I was never going to survive unless I found something new to do. One other question, and I am sorry I do not remember the gentleman's name, but in honor of doing this podcast with you today, I saw his story. He's a guy that's trying to never die. What do you think of that? And that is honestly tunnel vision purpose, where every single second of your day is calibrated and studied. And what do you think of that kind of regime where you are so strict with yourself? Do you think versions of that are very productive? Do you think they're filled with fear or toxicity? I would just like to have your opinion.
Yeah, it's a great question, and from a researcher mind for myself, I love that there are people out there that are doing this. They're documenting every moment of every day,
Yeah.
every test they do, every food they eat, how they sleep, all sorts of things, and they're guinea pigs on themselves. So I encourage individuals that want to do that for greater society because we all learn from that. However, there's a huge negative ramification for that for individuals in a lot of ways because it's a obsessive
He's
issue.
so obsessive.
It is actually rather unhealthy, I think, because it's the only thing in their life. And we know that metabolically, you can be very healthy, that there's ways to do that. And certain individuals are basing it on that very narrow aspect of the human body. There's a lot of aspects around mindset, around purpose, around friends, around the enjoyment of life. And if individuals find enjoyment and purpose and everything from doing this one relatively narrow area, that's great. But the people I work with, it's a different way of looking at life. It's around balance. It's around how do I maximize the enjoyment factors. Drinking a small amounts of alcohol with friends that add to the experience is a positive. Going on vacations and eating a bad meal or two here or there because you want to try local culture and you want to try certain foods and environments, that provides a whole layer of value to individuals. But if you do about 80% of your time right, we always talk about this 80-20. If we can 80% of the time do things as well as we can, nutrition, sleep, exercise, all of this, and we have this 20% where we get to really explore, try things that would be not textbook on, living forever. That to me actually is likely to provide a better long-term outcome, and you're going to enjoy your day today a lot better. So that's the way I approach it. There's people out there that like doing that and that's their thing, and there is definitely an obsessive nature to it. It's not for everyone, and it's not for the masses either. We're talking about a
Oh,
very
yeah.
very tiny segment of the population. But it's interesting from a viewpoint standpoint, and they're doing a lot of untested things, which is to me scary. I would never recommend that to any of the individuals I work with. Certain aspects of what they do, they're using unregulated drugs, they're using off-label drugs, they're doing medical procedures on themselves that aren't even allowed in the country, so they have to fly to other countries to do it. So
For
there's
sure.
a lot of things in that world that is extreme and that's on the edges, and some of it may get regulated at some point. They're probably going to help some of that to happen. So I'm all for individuals trying it on themselves. What I'm very much against is individuals, so-called experts, gurus, recommending these untested things to others. That's a very risky thing, and individuals have to be very careful because thousands of stories of bad outcomes of untested treatments, strategies, nutrition, eating too much of this, not enough of that, having major deficiencies. And with social media and all the ability for people to speak their mind, that's a positive in some respects, but then the consumer's confused because they don't know who to listen to now.
Hi, today we're talking about particular. This is a series of supplements, and let me tell you what, if you are aging with any sort of inflammation that becomes one of the biggest issues in your everyday life, and swelling and joint pain, oh, I'm on it 100%. I've begun a new vitamin regime from Particular that has literally changed my life. And I feel so much better on a daily basis. Try it out with a discount using our code below. You are going to love it.
Yeah.
I feel that way. I so am the biggest sucker for social media. So I see this advertisement for NAD, and it happened to be a physician that was on the same television network I was, HSN, and he's offering $30,000 to anybody who takes this for a month and doesn't look 30 years younger. Well, I can tell you, I've taken it for a month. I don't look 30 years younger, and I'm never going to get my money from him. But I just thought, oh my God, I believed him. And guess what? It's not true. And so I have to say, in the end result, we all would like to live forever. And yet, to me, the one component we always miss is, where's your gratitude for life? Where's your sense that life is beautiful? Where do you want to be beneficent and help those around you? And what kind of changes do you need to make to your essential personality to be able to go on? I mean, my friend Iris Apfel lived to be 103. My God, unbelievable. Somebody asked her why she was working, and she said, there isn't that much to do at 100. So if I can go on working, I like working. I'll do that. There are pioneers out there. You are literally like in the Amazon with a machete, fighting your way through the jungle to make a pathway. And I wish it was possible for those of us who are going into advanced aging to be able to get together, have a community, and form a plan, and be able to kick around what's important to us, what is out of reach for us that we wished we could contact again. And so your knowledge is just priceless. Honestly, Mark, I thank you so much for this podcast, because it brings up the point that the human body is such a precious mechanism, and we need to take care of it on so many levels that we honestly never think about unless we come into contact with an expert like you.
Well,
Thank
thank you for
you.
saying that, and I enjoyed being here with you. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. It's a great time
We'll
in your
list
life.
all your info for sure.
Anytime.
Yay.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.